everybody. Welcome back to the Comic-Con podcast. It's season 2, episode 49. I'm your host today, Manimal, aka Zach, whichever way you want to go, Zach or the Manimal. I'll be doing it solo today. Justin might pop in here a little bit as we go, but we do have a very, very special guest today. If you heard us talking on Lords of the Long Box, I already kind of gave you guys a clue as to who we'd be talking to today. But today we have Eric July, the creator of the Rippaverse, creator of Isom. Eric, welcome to the Comic-Con podcast. How's it going, man?
Man, it's going great, man. And I certainly appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. We've been following you for a while now. I think the whole Rippaverse Isom stuff kind of hit about in June, July time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of when everything started picking up steam and everything. And the book dropped in, if I remember correctly, man, August, September?
Right in September. Yeah.
September. Okay. Yeah. I know I ordered right there from the Rippaverse website, and it came pretty quick, man. So we'll get into all that. But yeah, tell us a little bit about how it started. Tell us about Isom. Tell us about Rippaverse. Let's get it going.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was a dream come true for me to be in a position to do this, and obviously, I've been in the commentary space for a while with just comics in general, just talking about them, stuff I like, stuff I don't like, whatever, built the following kind of that will look to my material upon me talking about just comic book based stuff. And I figured, after all of this money I had saved, I figured that it was a great time for me to take that leap and actually start my own comic book company. Definitely during this time, I feel like it was a big hole in the market right now, definitely in the American comic book market, because you have a lot of people that are, let's say, dissatisfied, call it whatever you want to, but they just maybe are looking for something else. And I figure, okay, yeah, this is a good time for me to just, there may not be another time that that will be better than right now. So I said, let's do it. And on the back end, obviously it took months, for a better part of a year to just make it happen, paying my artists, obviously making sure, building a business up from the ground up, bringing people on and all that. And of course, all the logistics of it all, because, you kind of handle, when you do it the way that we did it, you're basically running two businesses. You're running the creative side of the actual creating the book, writing the book, the artwork and all that. But then you have like the logistics of the economics and the distribution and all that. So we have because we're doing our own distribution. So it was certainly a lot that had to go into that. And, we put it out there. I said I was going to take this as serious as I possibly could. And, we put it out there. Everybody saw the artwork. They wanted to invest certainly in buying the project. And now we got it out to them going in that September. And I was just stoked. Yeah, it felt good to get the material out, to actually sell it. And, I was packing boxes for months, doing all that. Like that was,
I
cool.
saw the pictures of you kind of handling it yourself, right?
Yeah,
just in the warehouse, man.
Yeah, I have a warehouse team, but I was right there, right alongside them, packing the orders, and to do all that and to get it out was certainly an experience in itself. And, I had a sense of, I was proud that we got it out. But in the same respects, I think the most important thing was that people got it and they enjoyed it. And that's what we sought to do. We wanted to have people be satisfied customers. And I think we were able to certainly accomplish that with the first book.
Yeah, you guys are kind of definitely sort of, I don't know if I'm getting this definition wrong, but very much like grassroots, right? Like you kind of did it all yourself. You started from the bottom. You did it. You put it out. Like you said, you were in the warehouse kind of doing everything and being a part of everything, which is great. So like one question I have though, being a comic book like fan, obviously first and foremost, right? And we talked offline right now about like living the dream of writing your own comic book. That's every reader's fantasy and dream, right? But then you get into, like you said, the business aspect and the animal of what that is. Does that ever kind of take away from the love for comics a little bit? Like, it definitely changes it a little, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it gives you more perspective, certainly, or a different perspective. Now, thankfully, this wasn't my first creative project that I had to handle the business for. And I think that kind of prepared me. But even with all that preparation over the last decade, because of the music stuff that I had been doing and all that, it still is a different thing. It's certain aspects that are unique. There's a lot of crossover with kind of what we were doing with music, but it certainly is a unique kind of thing. Definitely when the game changers handling your own distribution. And sometimes when you like, okay, obviously I wasn't anticipating that we had tens of thousands of people, that many people that were buying it, which meant tens of thousands of orders, almost 50,000 orders.
Yeah.
And so they're packing the orders. And, I knew that it was something that I needed to do. I wanted to do because I wanted the experience in doing it, but also, the team kind of picks up on it. That the owner of the company is actually there.
Oh, right, right.
Getting his,
you're in the trenches with them.
Yeah, right there with him alongside him. There's certainly nothing that I would ask of my team that I wouldn't certainly do. And that gave me an opportunity to prove that. And I was there every day, 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, getting it done, sometimes Sunday. And it's just, I guess it was a game in the learning, I guess, how it worked, because there's a lot of logistics that, despite all the experience, you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
You're
learning as you go.
Yes, exactly. You
Yeah.
can prepare yourself as much as you want, but then inevitably there's going to be some stuff that you just, you may have not been prepared for, and you kind of got to just roll with the punches. But I thought that experience was pretty good. It was awesome because I got to learn, and I'm a guy, I'm an individual, believe it or not. I'm always trying to learn. I don't figure I know it all by any means. And it was fun to learn even more and be better equipped, because what happens is we go into the next campaign for the next book. And, some of those things where, there were hiccups, we get to fill those gaps and we get to do it better. Yeah. And that's the awesome thing, because it's going to mean a better experience, even better experience for the users that are on the website, as well as the actual customers that are getting the book. So it didn't necessarily take away from it, but it certainly is something that I can see how why a lot of creative people, which I have my own complaints about, creatives in this industry, and how they neglected the business side of it, which is why it's kind of this, you have this facilitated industry of a lot of people struggling financially despite being creators of some of the most notable comic book characters. I have my gripes there. But you can see when you experience why so many of those folks would just rather not handle the business side, and they kind of shy away from it. But it's something I welcome. I'm one of the rarities of not only just being a creative, but being a businessman as well. And you kind of have to be to do this the way that we did it.
Yeah. So I have a confession. Obviously, been in the comic book game for a long time, reading everything, know a lot about comic book news and stuff. But unfortunately, my father-in-law was the one who told me about Rippaverse, which was the weirdest situation in life. So my father-in-law is very handy. He's not a comic book guy. This is not his angle, man. And all of a sudden he comes over and he's like, "Hey, you heard about this comic book Isom?" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Have you heard about this?" I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" He's like, "I saw it on Fox News." And my father-in-law definitely, he leans a little bit more right than he does left, of course. And he kind of launches into the whole, basis behind your book. And I was like, "Oh shit, man. Like, I got to check this out." And so I look it up and I was like, "Oh, hell no, dude. I don't know anything about this. This sounds really interesting." So I'm moderately embarrassed that my father-in-law had to tell me about the book, man. But we found you and I loved it, man. So, before we kind of talk about the story and the characters and all that, I think it's kind of important to kind of talk about what drove you to make this book. Like what the basis for Isom and the Rippaverse was, the gap that you found in the comic book community that was bugging you, or the comic book industry. Yeah. And I guarantee you my listeners are going to be with you on this one. So kind of give us the spiel.
There's a couple of different things that I found let me say this, that would aggravate me with how the industry was. It was two things. I know some people look at the content problem in itself, which is a big part of it, that lent itself to more, okay, well, these stories are beating their audience over the head with maybe some social political stuff that for a lot of people, they can handle it when you give it to them here and there, but it kind of got a little more heavy fisted and it was slanted one way. So, a lot of people had issues with that, and rightfully so. I was one of them. But the other part was obviously the continuity and canon aspect that seems to be lost really with let's say the big two. Me as a reader, when it feels like they're just putting out books just to put out books. It can be sometimes very, very difficult to keep up with some of your favorite characters because they're appearing in different books, but also it's oh, well, it's an alternate universe version of this character and all that, and that can get a little ridiculous and even intimidating for people that want to get in at the ground level. So I made it a point to prioritize with the company, and that was the void that I wanted to feel. Like those aspects, the main aspect being, okay, I want to give people a universe that they can get lost in. They don't have to feel like, okay, well, this is going to be Fox News or MSNBC, the book. Like, you know,
Right.
it's more of, this is just a good universe for you to get lost in. And that's what I wanted to create. So that was the void that we were trying to fill. So, you know, I spent a year, really a better part of that year, just world building, right? Like the foundational stuff. Like I have an entire like universe Bible already. And I've like for Isom, obviously stuff that didn't all get revealed in the first book, but you know, we've gone through everything with his history. And I wrote that down, and you know, where my plans were, at least in terms of what direction I was going to take. I had all that documented before I had actually even wrote really the first story. Now, yes, as I was writing it, there were some other characters that I had an idea that I introduced certainly in there, but the actual world building took place before I wrote the story, because that was something that I wanted to emphasize with this, and that I have the plan. I'm playing a long game. Let's say that my plan isn't just to have a book start to end, it's done, you know, hey, it's nice, it's cool graphic novel, which I'm not knocking people that do that. My whole appeal here is like, I'm giving you a universe to get invested in. So for those people that were like me, that like, okay, well, between all the reboots of the universes and all that other annoying stuff that and as well for those that may have seen a Batman animation, or let's say a cartoon, or like a movie or something, and maybe you're like, hey, I want to go read the books, and then, you know, good luck trying to, I get this question,
where do you start, right?
Where do you start? Like, hey, I like Batman, where do I start? And I got to come up with a big diagram.
Detective Comics 27.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to do all of this, like, and then you got to explain to them, well, this version isn't really, it's Bruce, but he's in a different universe, Black Label. And it's like, it can be very confusing. And I wanted to cut all of that out with my universe. And that was a big appeal, you know, of the continuity and aspect of it. And for our customers that got like, they got a little more insight in it when they got like the concept art books, as well as the concept art book, as well as the like trading cards that we have, that gives them kind of a little more insight to some of these characters. Because I'm all about world building, because a lot of that, and the fact that there's this universe, it's not that every character has to know each other or anything. It's just the fact that there's a universe that all these guys exist on. And you know, maybe we make it epic when there is a crossover or something. Like, it's all about the canon and continuity, and I want everybody that gets a book to have a piece of history, not feel like, well, these events are going to be washed away in the next 5 years or something.
Right, like a Marvel event that doesn't matter 10 years down, or 1 year down the road.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, you don't even got to go that far. A lot of
summer.
Exactly.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on here in terms of like, especially Marvel. And I mean, I'm a massive Marvel guy. I'm an X-Men fanatic. I mean, that's my go-to title. But yeah, you know, it just dilutes it all the time, like all the events, and nothing really is like, Justin and I talk about this, how you have a 6-issue event, right? Whether it's Inhumans versus Avengers or X-Men or whatever. And the first 2 issues seem so big, like, oh man, something big happened. They killed a guy in issue 2. And then issue 6, it's like, oh, he's back and nothing really matters and nothing changed. And it's just like rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And it's tiresome. It's tough though, as well, with like those big titles, the Supermans, the Batmans, the X-Men. Like, it is very hard to, you know, how do you do a good jumping on point? We talked about recently, I think like an episode or 2 ago, we talked about how much love Justin and I had for like New 52, in terms of like, that was a great idea for DC. It's like, you know what? Hey, we're going to redo DC. It's too much. Like, people can't jump on here. We'll keep the Batman lore. We'll keep some of the Superman lore, the Green Lantern lore, but everything else is kind of new. Here's a good jumping on point. And they introduced B and C level characters that were fun titles. And but you know, the market it doesn't last. So one of the things we wanted to talk about here is kind of like the social issues that are going on. And they obviously are in comic books right now. It's so prevalent in our time. Everything's a social issue. And that's not to take away from the importance, right, in the real world for, you know, racism, social issues, the LGBTQ community, all that. But comic books is kind of an escape, right? It's an escape from all the shit that exists in the real world. And it just, sometimes it does feel flooded right now, right, in the Marvel and the DC universe on all those issues. And That's what I really loved about the appeal of the Rippaverse.
Yeah,
One of the
that was a
things.
big point that, we came out with our first trailer and we talked about exactly that, where I was like, look, I'm staying away from that. And people know me as a person, like, certainly I'm not shy about where I'm at, politically or apolitically, if you depending on how you want to put it, or
Mhm.
anti-politically, because as much as I may
Right.
despise the government or anything, I'm able to separate that because again, I know what comics meant for me. The real world sucks for a lot of people. Let's just be
Right.
honest here. So I wanted to create a world where people could. There are universal truths, good, evil, cut and dry. It doesn't matter where you kind of are on the political spectrum. You can separate that and identify that, and I believe those are what are more focus is to be on, as opposed to trying to beat my audience over the head with my personal politics. The great Stan Lee, he talked about there was one quote that I remember of his where he talked about like where he tried to put like social issues underlaying the plot, but
Right.
never to the point to where he was beating the audience over the head with it. And that's what it is that I am more interested in. And like I just want to go where the story goes, and it makes sense. It makes sense, but I'm not necessarily like going out of my way to try to check political boxes or social boxes. I don't think that's worth it for my users, for my readers or my customers. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to certainly do that. And I'm not oblivious. I know that because I talk about this stuff, and I know that so many people saw it for what it was, the same things that I had seen. So the fact that we didn't even try to reinvent the wheel here, it was more like, no, I'm making something that has some level of familiarity in the sense that superhero American comic books, but in the same respects, I'm not gonna do what these other guys are
Right.
doing, and that was a big appeal. That was certainly a big appeal. All I had to do is just say I won't do what they do, and people were certainly into that, and that drew a lot of people in. I think people get under this kind of silly impression that maybe all of my readers are on like the same exact wavelength politically, and that just couldn't be anything further from the truth. That's actually nonsensical, all things considered, because for most people, for a lot of them, that's not even the driving point, other than the fact that we are going to stay out of that for the most part. So that's a big appeal. And I want to give people that out because I know folks go through some stuff, and I want people to, at minimum, to be able to take a step back, get lost in the world with the books that we're putting out, but also with the fandom. You know what I mean? With being
Right.
able to talk to other people that are in this. We've seen little mini fandoms kind of pop up surrounding the Rippaverse theories and all that. That stuff is fun. Some of the best people that I've met in my life have been within the comic book culture. You know what I mean? And I know how important that was to me. And I want people to be able to experience that again, where they don't have to feel like, well, I differ maybe social politically and I'm not welcome because I may be leaning this way. Like, that's all nonsense. It's about the world in itself.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, what was a big driving force for why so many people got enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a, a very like polarized time right now
Yeah.
where you're either that or right or you're left. And I don't
Yeah.
think I think we agree on this. It's not real. Like
Yeah.
the majority of people, 80% of people are in the middle and are probably like, yo, that guy's crazy and that guy's crazy
Yep.
over there too. They're both
Yep.
crazy as shit.
Yep.
And the most of us are just like, we're just trying to survive here,
Yeah.
man, and have a little bit of fun on the side, but like also not stick your head in the sand. But it's not even a fine line. It's just it's very reasonable to do these things, and it does seem like Marvel for sure is definitely the worst of the big two in
Oh
my
yeah.
opinion in
Oh,
terms of, like you said, checking the boxes. Justin and I talk about this a lot. Is obviously the tokenization of
mhm.
characters, and right, the changing of, like, you have these amazing characters like Spider-Man and Captain America and Iron Fist and Luke Cage and stuff like that, right? Like classic characters. And then they find the need to instead of creating like a new amazing African American character,
Yeah.
well, let's just make Black Spider-Man,
Yep.
or because that's just the easy one, right? Like
Yep.
that will sell. Or hey, let's get rid of Iron Fist and make it an actual, or Iron Fist, a new Asian guy,
Yeah.
something like that. And it's just, I feel like obviously I'm a white guy, and there's also a sense of like, I'm not allowed to say these things because of like entitlement or whatnot. But if I was a minority, I would feel moderately offended by this. I feel like you're saying that you can't make new characters, you can't make our culture representative and awesome characters. I mean, dude, Luke Cage is badass.
Oh yeah,
Black Panther is badass. These are two
100%.
great African American characters that are amazing. Make more. Make more.
Yeah, that's been my argument forever. You know, with tokenism, I think a lot of folks would they like to think that I have a position that I don't have. So, you
Right.
know, definitely. So if somebody white said it, it's like, well, you have a problem with, if you speak against tokenization, you have a problem with black characters. Like,
Mhm.
no, nobody, I don't know
No,
anybody that's actually said that.
nobody feels that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody feels that way. It's just that why are you having to take this character who we've already seen, we know their stories, and then just make like a race swapped version
Mhm.
of them? Definitely when there's either characters that, you know, I'm definitely in Marvel or DC's catalog that they have that are already, let's say, not white male characters.
Right.
But you know, if you don't see the one that you'd want to exist, go create them. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
Like it's as simple as that. And yeah, it is insulting because what they do is, whether they, and I don't want to say that they do it purposely or not, but because it's not really important. But what it is to me, it's like, okay, well, you look at a character like Spider-Man, who, you know, becomes one of the most prominent superheroes of all time. That took
Mhm.
decades of work. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
decades of story and character building to get to that point. To me, what it says is that they're not willing to do that same level of put that same level of attention to work for a, let's say, a character of a different race,
Mhm.
which is their own problem, and that is the problem. And you
Yeah.
know, I'm look, man, I'm about as it can't get, Isom and Rippaverse can't get more obvious in the fact that people absolutely will support a new character, right?
Of
From a bare
course.
bones, even if you start from a complete scratch, not like another derivative of another character, like just a fresh character. People are absolutely willing to do that. If it obviously it still needs to be good, it still needs to
Right. Right.
have some like catching point. Like, you're not obligated to people's money or obligated for people to people's support. However, you absolutely can do it, and we're living proof of it, that yes, you can come up with original characters of whatever race and make them, let's say, hit with the audience. It just takes a little attention to detail, and it certainly takes work. And what, unfortunately, the current eras of the comic book industry, definitely with the established properties, have said that, well, we would rather not do that. We would
Yeah.
just take the one that's already recognizable and just palette swap them, which is kind of lazy.
Yeah, and you know, we have like it's funny right now. That's a really good poignant statement you made on Spider-Man, right? Like he didn't show up and he was immediately fan. You know, he was so badass. Like everyone, don't get me wrong, people love Spider-Man, but it took decades to
Yep.
get him to the point we're at. And I feel like we are in kind of a spot right now where we have a character, a black character in Marvel, which was Black Panther,
Mm-hmm.
who has been around for a good chunk of time, right? But has never been super, super popular. I mean,
Right.
honestly, been hard pressed to keep a title running. It doesn't
Yeah.
sell super well. It retcons, it restarts over and over again. But we are in kind of like an era now where they've put in the time, they've created the character. I mean, from Wakanda, the origins to where Wakanda is now, totally different.
Yeah.
The political structure in Wakanda is so much more interesting. The class social structure over there, so much more interesting than it was before when it was just a guy in a cat suit, right? You know,
Right.
so they've developed it more, and you're seeing obviously with the MCU and the movies and whatnot that it's becoming a richer character. And
Yeah.
it takes time. It
Oh,
takes time and dedication to it. You just got to devote it and keep going.
yeah. I mean, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. It's just that's how art, that's how entertainment works. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, some characters. I knew this with music. I use this as an example all the time with like music, and that, you know, I've been there where, you know, I'm in backwards. I've been in Fire from the Guys. I've been in Billboard charting, you know, like bands, right?
Mhm.
And I know the old rule is don't get married to a song, because you never know. You know, you may think you got the best song in the world that the audience is going to love, and they may think it's okay, but then you buried a song that's in your album that you didn't even
Right.
make as a single, and that ends up being like one of the most popular songs on the record.
The
We've
B
done
side,
it.
right?
Yeah,
Something on the B side
yeah,
hits.
and
Yeah.
people are like, this is dope. So it happens like that. That's how it sometimes works out, but it does take work. It takes effort to get to that point. And I think that's the part of it all where why the tokenization, let's say as an example, is something that's so attractive, because it's basically the work doesn't have to be done at all. It's just, hey, it's already baked in. People at least recognize his name or suit or something like that. So we can just swap things and bam, we're ready to go. Whereas starting from scratch, you don't have that previous let's say like jumping point, and it can be a little difficult. But to me, as an artist, just as a straight up artist, I welcome that, and that's the fun part. That's the innovative part of it all. To let's make this hit. And I'm just glad that, for example, with our work, people are enthusiastic about Isom, but it ain't just Isom. It's Yaira, it's these other characters that got introduced that people are like, I want to know more about that. And that to me is it shows that there's absolutely a demand for this type of stuff.
Yeah, man. So Justin just joined us. Justin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on, Eric?
What's up?
So glad you could jump on here. I unfortunately I missed some stuff, but I'm excited to re-listen to it, and I'm a big fan over the past couple of months. I'll kind of give you real quick like my introduction of you. It was back in July, and I was at my gym working out in the morning, and all of a sudden they're talking about Rippaverse on like Fox News, and I was just like, it's like comic books on like the gym. I'm like, wait, what's going on?
And
so it was like
on the news. What's happening?
it was like right. I think it was right around like San Diego Comic-Con time. I'm just like, I go, Zach, I was like, you got to check this out. Like, look into this guy, Eric July and the Rippaverse. I was like, and Zach, picked up your book, and I was just like, I like it, and there's a lot of stuff some crazy stuff. Like it's so funny. I don't know if you guys talked about music, but Zach and I are big rockers. So like, I actually have been listening to you probably for quite a long time. Like I have a ton of gym playlists, and one of your songs is on my gym playlist for probably like at least a year. And I didn't even know for backwards. Like I was like,
awesome.
Appreciate that. I looked it up. I was like, holy shit, Eric July's like the vocalist. So glad you could be on the podcast. Sorry I'm late, but yeah, let's continue, man.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about like the music stuff here after down the line, but let's jump into Isom. Let's jump into the characters and the story. And I'm gonna tell you what, right out the gate, right? Obviously we talked about kind of what you were trying to accomplish with the book, and I hope this is a compliment. But when I was reading it, I was like, fuck, man, am I back in the 90s? This is amazing. Like, because the 90s are like the era of comics. Like Justin and I are the same age. We're both 38 years old, 39 years old. And it's like, say what you will about 90s comics, but that was the glory days. That's when you had like
for us,
everything was amazing. And I was like, man, it's like I'm reading a 90s comic again. This is fun. This is great. And I loved, you spoke about this a little bit earlier, how you had kind of like plotted out your whole universe, right? And so in my head, I picture you've got like dry erase boards and yarn and everything and all these like secret shit, right? So and I remember there's a panel where Isom meets the guy who makes his suits. Can't remember his name right now.
Cedric,
yes. And it says like story will be told later in like a little box later. So it's like, oh shit, so they already know there's more stuff. And so give the readers who maybe haven't read it, give them a little teaser trailer on what are we looking at here with Isom.
So Isom obviously was the first character that I did create with the Rippaverse, and he was one of those, like, everything was done purposely. He was the character that I had the most input on, and collaborating with my my concept artist, and that I actually drew, even though I can't really draw a lick. Drew out the actual suit, and I wanted it as simple as it actually is for that reason, because I'm like, okay, this is going to be our launching kind of character. I want there to be some level of familiarity with him as a person, as well as more so as a being completely original. But you see it, and like you mentioned, like that era when we grew up, like you see it and you're like, well, yeah, that's a character that could have done
kind of an archetype, right?
Yeah, exactly. That could have done decently during that era. You know what I mean? And that's what I wanted to do. That's why its suit is as simple as it is, because that was the that was the whole goal. So of course, Avery Stillman being the character that we created, we're picking up with the story after he had basically stopped being a hero, you know what I mean? And, now we're kind of moving into this era where, okay, he has this big city that he lives on the outside of, that he tries to stay away, but because of various things, he keeps having to go back. And, with Isom, we're taking him through with his sister, is the one that drives that kind of plot there, where, she has basically with a family friend to both of them. And because he wants to, help her out, or rather his mom, he knows that, well, if I don't help out this family friend who's looking for a daughter, like I'm going to hear it. So I'm going to go ahead and deal with this. And, obviously it turns into one of the longest days in his life. And that's when he's running into all these different characters, Santuan, there's history there, Yaira, and certainly all of that. But, with the book itself, you get kind of the where he's at, like, oh, he has his own like ranch, you know what I mean, that has obviously employees that are there. That's very, very important to him. He has a staff and all of that. And I wanted to try to do as organic as I could to, there's launching points. You mentioned like the ending with like or towards the ending where he meets up with the guy that made his suit in Cedric. You see that and you're like, well, there's more to that story.
There's a history there.
Yeah, exactly. There's history. There's other branching off points. And that's what I want the reader to be able to understand. So, when we move into, for example, Isom 2, which will be the next book that'll come out through the Rippaverse, we can dive a little more in. But, there's other plot points, launching points where that may make sense for other books. And that was so fun for me because immediately once it was out, I saw people like having their theories of who this character, what is Yaira, what is her origin, as far as what's going on with that. Santuan, what's the history? Because you see that he knew that, that like Santuan, when he hits the club, he knew that Darren Fontano's Except was a Except. He knew that he had powers. How did he know that? Well, this history, like all that, doing that and weaving that kind of into the story was so fun for me. And I know it's fun for the audience and definitely for people that are still picking up on the story. Like it's something that's easy. It's a digestible read. You can get into it and you really know where the kind of plot points are, the jumping off points, and it gets you kind of excited for the future.
Yeah, you got great characters in there. Like you said, Yaira is super interesting. She's got, is she a criminal? Is she a good guy? Yep. Like, what's she doing? What's her deal, man? And then you got Alpha Core. Like, who are these guys? Are they like the police officers? Are they like the broke ass Justice League of this universe? Because they also kind of seem like they're not quite with it. I don't know. Like they're also there's some shadiness, it feels like, to those guys. But the one that's really cool, and like Justin was kind of talking about the music, but you had a little like I don't know what's called an epilogue or like a bonus scene at the end with Norfrika, right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
They're like a metalcore band, right? But they're also, it feels like they're chasing after some demons or maybe some aliens or something going on. We'll see more of them in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah. Most definitely. That was a fun one. And obviously with the music stuff, that was kind of one that was a little more personable to me, you know what I mean? To be able to put like an actual metal band like in the deal. And that was an idea I had long ago. It's like, how can I do something cool? Certainly like that. I think it's like the music element and how that kind of weaves into like actual fiction. I think it's something that hasn't been explored nearly enough. There's just so much that you can do with that. And that was kind of my way to do that. So we've got so much,
plans,
so many people
plans.
Excited. Yeah, we got plans. I got a lot of plans with that band. Let's just say that going into the future that we're going to have a lot of fun with. And I know the audience is as well. And that was cool. I did a poll not too long ago on my social media asking people like, hey, just, not even giving straight up characters or giving them the options. It wasn't a poll hey, I was like, hey, leave in the comments, man. What characters do you want to hear about a little more, or rather you most intrigued to learn more about? And it would range. It would talk about Alpha Core, it talk about the guy that makes the suits, it talks about Santuan or Darren Fontano, like this Jasmine, like what role does she play in it?
Right.
Like it was so
there's something with her for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so much. And that to me is the fact that, and it may sound a little corny, but it's honest. Like the fact that people are enthusiastic about comics for comics again, like with this world meant the world to me. Right. You know what I mean? Because I love that about it. Because ultimately that's what it was about. People can knock me for whatever. They don't like my politics or what. I don't care about that. The fact that there's people getting lost in this world already and are actually excited for just comics in general, that can only benefit our industry, the comic book industry, and other people as well. And I just like that people are having fun.
Yeah, you're definitely talking to two people that read a lot of comics. Like it's we're Zach and I, there's a lot of YouTube channels out there, a lot of podcasts, and people can kind of like float the line, like if they're really a reader. But I mean, Zach and I literally every week we talk about the comics that we read, whether it's old stuff, new stuff, but it changes. And Rippaverse for Isom, like, are you the only person that's going to be writing, or do you have some other people that are in mind?
Not at all. Like, so right now we have Isom too. That's obviously being worked on the same team as myself, Cliff Richards, Gabe, Bell Taib, Eric will do the lettering again. But there's also 2 other announced projects that we have, unannounced projects that I've talked about, but I haven't announced the team or what the stories are gonna be that are currently in the works that like have already, like, we have full scripts for both of them. As of for a while, we're probably like 30 pages in or so of pencil and ink for that one. Probably like 12 or so pages, 12, 15 pages of color for one of those. And then the other one is starting pencil and ink today. It started today. So we're going to be moving. And I don't write those other 2 stories. There's a different art team. But it is fun to kind of, because again, this is all about continuity for me. So the fun part of it is dealing with other writers, and we're having to have a conversation. It's not, I know with like current, at least when I, up until the point where I just said I'm done with having a pull list, you know what I mean? Up through the last couple of years, the fact that, there's no conversation, there's no real publication kind of release calendar that makes any sense for a lot of these different, like definitely with the big 2, where it's like you feel that writer, unless it was like a tie-in, War of the Realms or something like that. But outside of that, it doesn't feel like that could be, that there could be one team or a writer writing the same character as another, and they didn't have any conversation as far as what is he doing in your book, you know what I mean, or what had just happened, so we can at least make this look cohesive. And for us, that is such an important thing. And because we're at the ground level, it's fun I already have. When I'm speaking to the other team members or the writers that are doing their thing, we have to have a meeting and have conversation. Like, I had to break down everything, what the ideas are. I give them a glimpse of the world and the universe Bible. I give that entry so they can have that point of reference. And then, I'm reading over the story. And if I say, hey, that doesn't make sense because of what happened in Isom, we scrap that. So it's all about that having that level of like cohesiveness with not just with the team, but with just a comprehensive sort of like story is certainly what it's about with our world. And that's the fun thing to do when you're dealing with these other writers. I can't wait to announce them at some point because they are industry veterans and a lot. You
don't want to make it a Comic-Con podcast exclusive?
Not quite. We're almost ready. We're almost ready. But I know so many people are going to be absolutely enthusiastic about some of the art teams that are involved with it too. One in particular, I know a lot of folks are going to be stoked on because we did. Let's just say that there is a artist that's on it that had been part of one of the more successful books, let's say in the last half decade, that will be on this project. And I know a lot of people are going to be excited about it.
Are you planning on keeping like the same format, like the graphic novel, 64 pages? You ever going to move to kind of like the issues? Like, what's the game plan with that?
I like it's hard for me to justify, let's say, like the typical floppy. I know I know that's like the industry standard, but for me, I like the idea of being able to tell, like, I don't have to jam pack a story with too much going too fast or anything. And I can our artists and I guess, let me say this, with our writers, that was one thing that they thanked me for. I will say that both of them, ironically enough, despite I didn't initiate it, where they were like, thanks for giving us the time to just like tell a story. You know what I mean? Instead of feeling like I have to tell it over several issues, I could tell it in one, but I have enough pages to do it. You know what I mean? So they feel like they can do their best work. So I do like the format, with Rippaverse with Isom being like 96 pages. I will say that all the next 3 books that we will release all have at least 90 pages on them. So they're all going to be big. And I think that will be more of the standard as opposed to, just doing the floppies. It gives people more bang for their buck. And, they can really get lost in the story, which means that, it also works economically for us because we're not forced to have to like put out a book every week or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, hey, here, I basically pumped in what is going to be the equivalent to 4 to 6 issues of like a standard floppy in one book. You know what I mean? So that's 4 to 6 months. You know what I mean? That we just put in material that they got in one sitting. So it just makes sense to have it this way. And you look, I won't say that we won't change, but I think this will more than likely be our model going in the future.
Well, the content definitely is great in terms of, the price tag justifies the content. Like what you're getting is what you said, like you said, it's what you pay for. I mean, it's great. So, Justin and I, like we said, read weekly books, and sometimes you'll read an issue in a week and like nothing happened in it.
Yeah.
And you're just like, God damn, man. And it's just biding time till the next issue or whatever the arc. So,
and especially like new stuff, like, Zach and I, pretty much, and anybody out there, you read like a new book from a new content creator, learning a new universe. So like the Rippaverse, if you read that in like 20, 25 pages and you guys don't come out with an issue for like 3 to 6 months, people are going to be like, oh, what happened? So having that longer, larger format, it's perfect, because if you don't understand something, it's easy. All right, I could just go back like 10 pages to read it. Like instead of, oh man, I got to read the previous 2 issues because I can't remember what happened in this issue.
How'd you settle on like Cliff Richards and Gabe Al-Taib? How did that all come about? Because the artwork's amazing too. I mean, it's not just the story here, and I'm not an art guy. Justin's our art guy. I'm the story guy. But like, obviously shitty art makes the story kind of like hard to read at times.
Yeah.
Artwork is great and it's classic looking. So yeah, how'd you get your team?
Yeah, and that's funny. Like I'm more like you in sense of like I've been a big story guy, but I knew not to slack on the art. So I wanted to make sure that I had I needed industry veterans that knew exactly what they were doing. And that's what I saw. Like, I'm like, okay, this guy that's been a creative, I've never let my audience down with anything it is that I put out there. And then I'm going to be talking up this thing. So I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that whatever I come out with is comparable to anything being put out there in the industry, period. You know what I mean? Like to anything that people, if they're still reading Marvel or DC stuff or Image or IDW or whoever, they need to be sure to, like, let me just say this. If it's on the stand at a comic book shop and it's brand new, somebody picks that up, flips through it, it needs to be something that they feel like, okay, I can at least entertain it, right? And in order to do that, I needed to get people that knew what it is that they were doing. So I came across, because it was a lot, availability was a big part of it. And Cliff, you know what I mean, it felt like a hand and glove fit because he got it, you know what I mean, like right off the rip as I was vetting people. You know what I mean? So we kind of, the one that's, I guess, it's less of a sexy story with Cliff. It was like, hey, you are the best in terms of what I know that's available for us right now. And you are available for us right now and you get it. You know what I mean? So let's bring you on. You know what I mean? We talked business stuff. We made it happen. But Gabe is a little more intriguing because obviously Gabe had just come off of the Superman stuff that was he was doing color work for in DC. And because he had did something which to his credit was very ballsy and essentially he let people know because he didn't like the direction maybe of the content. He's like, all right, I'm done here. You know what I mean? And that was ballsy because, you know, as it works, man, it's like a click, man, with a lot of with the comic book stuff, with the art. That's the ugly side of it. It is clicky with it. And he knew right from the get-go that probably means I'm done, like being hired for like who he wanted to work, he had been working for multiple decades, as well as, of course, that's your dream as a kid, being an artist to go work for the DC and Marvel or whatever. He had did exactly that, but he knew doing what he did, that was probably done. So I had with Ethan Van Sciver, who linked us up because he's like, hey man, he's going to be on his way out. You know what I mean? You chat with him because we know I hadn't I wrote the story, but I hadn't settled on the colorist or anything. He just knew where I was at with my process. And he said, hey, just at least chat with him because he's going to be available. So him and I hit it off like we just as people, you know what I mean? Right. Like we hit it off immediately. Like him and I talk a lot, you know what I mean? And, you know, definitely for people that seen us in streams, like him and I you know, just personality wise, we are compatible. Let's just say that. And he's obviously a phenomenal colorist. So it worked out. It certainly worked out with him walking away from that. And I'm like, all right, I know now, even though it's not my first creative project. It's not my first time even writing like sequential like material. I've been ghostwriting for a minute, but as far as my own personal comic book with my name on it, on my company, this is the first one. You know what I mean? So
it's a big deal, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's important. And look, man, I know what my shortcomings are. I'm not one of those guys that thinks he knows every single thing about everything. I knew that an important part of this, if this was going to work, I needed to surround myself with people that know the game, that know as far as like what they would have told. If Cliff or Gabe thought that what I was writing sucked, they would have told me. Like they would have like been like, this is probably not the route that you go. and they would have told me. But also in just bringing my story to life, I needed people that knew what they were doing, and it worked out. You know what I mean? I surrounded myself with professionals, and those guys did a phenomenal job bringing this bad boy to life.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to kind of hear that. It does feel like the industry has kind of become riddled with gatekeepers, so to speak, right? Like, so if you piss someone off, you don't do it right, you're blacklisted or whatever, and it's unfortunate because it should just be creativity rises to the top, period. You got a good story to tell, you got good art to do. That's it. That's all that should matter. I mean, it's a business in and of it at the end of the day, and you're appealing to the masses. So like, you got a good story to tell, write that story. But no, it's always good to also, find those people that you work well with that are on the same page as you. And, experiences like that that makes the game. It would have been different if, like you said, you start your own company, you do your first comic kind of with your name on it, and you're pulling teeth the whole time. I mean, that sounds miserable, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome, man.
Yeah. I felt good. Like it really, like I walked away from after seeing Isom one before we put it out. It's about being sent over to the printer. Like I felt good about the project itself. It was fun. Me, Cliff, and of course Gabe. We had a great workflow in terms of how it works. Those guys are of the utmost professional in terms of what it is that they do. Great at their jobs, and they made it easy for me. And it had to succeed, just considering how good it was going. It was like it had no other, it couldn't fail. You know what I mean? Just considering that. And like I said, I'm so thankful to be able to have, again, guys like that be a part of this, the first comic book and comic books in the future, because that's the type of stuff that you need if you're going to get out there and be great.
How did you feel as, I don't know if you guys spoke on this, but seeing your book on the top 10, a few weeks ago? That
was nuts. Okay. I knew we were going to see success, and I'm going to be completely honest, that was not expected. I didn't expect the aftermarket to do what it did, and I certainly didn't expect to get $3.7 million. Like, I legitimately did not expect that. So when I saw that, we were basically where we were at, like it was us and like Spawn, definitely that week that it came out, like in terms of aftermarket, in terms of where people were investing, I was like, well, I didn't know that was going to be the case. I mean, even now, like the cover A and cover B, like those are selling double triple what everybody paid for it right now. If you even try to get it from eBay, every comic book shop, biggest comic book retail, online retailers like mycomicshop.com was selling. They couldn't sell out enough. You know what I mean? Because they were just going. That I didn't anticipate like at all. You know what I mean? And it could be overwhelming for it could have been my team, and thankfully, man, I got a bunch of rock stars that work at the Rippaverse, man, and everybody from my customer relations team on to my financials. All these guys are absolute rock stars, and they made sure that wherever everybody stepped up, picked up. It's a startup at the end of the day, so everybody's picking up new gigs that maybe they weren't doing before, just to make sure that the wheels keep churning. But it was nuts, and I didn't anticipate that. I had no idea that it was going to do what it was, to make $1 million on all our product, and it was basically in the first day. Like I was like, what in the world what is happening here? You know what I mean? Like I tried to prove for ourselves. I thought we had more than enough in terms of server capacity. These guys are breaking my website because it was insane that all that was going down, but it was a wonderful experience. We got the stress test so much, which is good. So
for sure.
Definitely with the next campaign, some of those problems that we had with the website won't be a problem. But just to see people that stoked about getting their hands on the material was it was special, man. I didn't expect it.
So before we move on to like talk some music here, I want to talk about backwards a little bit. But when can we expect Isom number 2?
So if all thing goes well, like for sure Q1 of 2023, that should be a thing.
Okay.
Like where it falls in there is a little more difficult, but that should be very doable because basically by the end of the year, at least for pencil and ink, it should be done. We'll still have letters and other stuff, and obviously we have to get the bad boy printed. But at least with pencil and ink and colors, like which are the big things, those will be done. So it will allow us to get this out basically as quick as we can, just making sure that the printer is going to be ready to go. Definitely with us falling in, start to fall in the yearbook season, and it gets weird with all of that stuff. So all things considered, Q1 for sure. But the good thing about it is because those other projects are being worked on, and I'm going to be starting on whatever next project, Isom 3, I don't know, here soon enough. There'll be more back to back, you know what I mean, in terms of the campaigns and like the actual books that people will be able to purchase. I don't want to nickel and dime everybody, don't want to give them too much, but it will be like people should expect. We can have an actual release calendar and like people know once this campaign ends, next one starts, and that's kind of how we wanted it to be. And I think we're going to be putting ourselves in that position going into next year. So Q1 where it falls, we'll see, but Q1 for sure of
nice.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. So Justin, let's kick off the rock talk here. So
yeah, so obviously, I've done my homework, and it's just wild. Like, I follow you on YouTube, and you're also a content creator. Like, like where Zach and I both come from, but content creator, writer, creator of your own universe, and also vocalist. So Zach and I are both like rockers. I'm from New Jersey. I'm from the 90s, New Jersey, New York hardcore scene. From like I'm back in the day, like that old stuff. So like when I found out that, I was listening, I had like I said, I had 2 of your songs on like my gym playlist, and then I was just like, damn, I gotta check this out. And dude, some good stuff, some really good stuff. So like, how did you get into that? Like where did you start? Were you always like a vocalist, or did you start on like, guitar, drums, or you're just like, I got the verbs, like I got it?
Yeah, like, so I've been a writer, obviously, and a performer in terms of like actual like vocals, be it in like different genres, like since I was a teenager. I grew up in the Texas kind of scene where, people were slinging mixtapes out of the trunk type stuff in the 2000s and all of that when I was coming up. So for me, that was a big part of kind of what it was that I was doing before, rap, R&B, stuff like that, along those lines. I had always been a guy that was in the rock, bass stuff, where it'd be metal, hardcore stuff. I was always into that stuff. It's just that I never like really started to perform it until like I was in college, right? So for me, it was like I was like, all right, well, I'm meeting other guys that are into this type of stuff. Let's see what can happen. And I didn't start doing vocals. I started I was doing the like keyboard metalcore days when people actually metalcore bands had like keyboardists and stuff, and that's what I did. And then that turned into like being obviously doing backup vocals because I could obviously hold a note. And then it got to a point to where I was like, you know what? Why don't I give the vocal part a try? I kind of do it in my like car when I'm driving or shower or something like that. And I can obviously sing, but let's add some more like actual screams and doing all that kind of stuff. Let's see what I can do and how it sounds. And really my test of that market was on my YouTube doing vocal covers, right? Back in like the early 2010s and stuff like that. And the audience responded. That was kind of my my second big rather like push for my channel, like my YouTube channel, was me doing a bunch of vocal covers. And obviously out of that, I joined Fire from the Gods, you know what I mean, in the early 2010s, and being like the vocalist that a lot of people think I was the first vocalist in that band. I wasn't. I was actually the like third, actually, technically.
Yeah, they've gone through a couple.
Yeah, I was actually the third, and I was just the one that obviously the sound that they have now, like I was the one that took it there. And like, because it was a deathcore band when I joined it, you know what I mean? So I was the one that came in. Okay, let's add some singing. Obviously, that was the first kind of step, and people Easter egg here. Not even Easter egg. It's more like insider stuff. A lot of people don't know. Like I got a lot of pushback. It was like the band was split on like the adding like the rap elements, which basically that ended up becoming like really part of it. That was like it was a lot of people we got pushback on that within the band. Like a lot of people they knew I could do it, and we had some guys that were like, hey, he needs to do that because he's obviously very talented, and that will separate us from the rest of the
of course
that are in this genre, because he can act. It's not like coming off as some corny rap stuff. Like he can actually spit, and it would sound good. And we ended up doing it obviously, and out of that I ended up leaving after kind of doing having our initial success, and I formed Backwards, and that was what took us off from there. And it was one thing led into another. And I was learning so much about the industry. It's funny, we were talking about earlier how just there's a lot of crossover with the music industry and the comic book industry, especially as it pertains to how artists and their approach. And I love to ask the question of why, and that's what Backwards was. Backwards saw the success because we were like, okay, I understand that everybody else is doing it this way, but why? And then when nobody can answer me as to why, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do it our way, and whatever happens. And yes, number one alternative new artist, number two heat seeker album on the Billboard, and the rest was history. So it was one thing led into another, and I had a lot of growth between like 2010, 2015. There was so much growth I had as a vocalist and a performer of just metal and like hard rock-based stuff. And thankfully, I went that route, man, because that certainly changed my life. And you can't even say it didn't, because it did lead into what I'm doing right now, because that gave me the initial financial boost to be able to invest in other projects like Rippaverse. So it worked out.
So Backwards' first appearance is in like the last page of Isom #1, right? Yeah. So how about how accurate are your bandmates? Like how accurately were they drawn in that? Were they pissed about it? Were like, yo, that don't look like me?
Well, it was funny. I think the only thing that was funky, even though he can play it both ways, Brian is depicted as he's a left-handed guitarist. He can play right because most guitars are made for right, obviously. But he's depicted playing it right, which right-handed guitarist, when he probably should have been a left-handed, because with us he plays left-handed. But other than that, Cliff nailed it. And that was a fun little page to put in there, because we get asked all the time, because I bit off all these ventures. I do this, I do the Blaze, I do all that. A lot of people are like, when are we going to get the next Backwards album? And that was my way to be able to say, yeah, you're going to get it. We're going to be back and rocking and rolling again. So that was a fun little thing to do.
So I saw something else about you, that you ran track and field in college. So did I. What'd you run?
I ran 100 and 200. 100 and 200.
Okay. Yeah, I was a hurdler, man.
Hurdles,
nice. 400 hurdles, 4x4, that kind of stuff. So.
Nice. Yeah, I would. 100, 200 guy, did 400 when I absolutely had to. Wasn't the worst. That's a man's race, man. I wasn't built for that. But yeah, that was fun times. I was in my last year. I was of that. I was in Fire from the God. So yeah, that was a cool little thing to do, because some of them coming to my meets and stuff like that. So it was cool.
That's cool, man. So Justin, anything else before we get into what we're currently reading?
No, not really. We could definitely go right into what we're currently reading this week. Absolutely.
Yeah, why don't you lead us off, Justin?
Yeah. So it was a big week. There was a lot of big week. We're back to that middle of the pack stuff. So this week had two interesting books for me. Of course, coming out of last month's annual for Batgirls. Of course, I like this month's regular Batgirls issue number 15. Was it? Of course, that's kind of like my honorable mention. If you heard me speak about the annual, that kind of Cassidy and you had Stephanie both kind of switched roles, kind of like a Freaky Friday thing, and you kind of get a continuation with what's going on there. But my one pick of the week this week, and done by Kanto creator David Bower, the Specs from Boom Studios. I don't know if you picked up those first two issues, Zach.
I know what you're talking about, but no.
Yeah, so it continues kind of like that little horror thing. These two guys, they get these pair of glasses that they see in in like the newspaper or comic magazine. They buy them, and basically they wish, and things happen, and it kind of trails off. The second issue definitely, kind of starts giving you vibes of more horror, and what types of issues you have with the powers that you can have with just a pair of glasses, and then the fallouts of what happens. So definitely check out Specs from Boom Studios. Definitely a great book for my 2 books this week. What about you, man?
Cool. So let's see. So one I've talked about before, which issue 2 came out this week, was Hell to Pay from
Oh yeah, that's right. You were telling
Image. Me. Yes, Charles Soule. I love Charles Soule. And I really love it. Like I said, it's like Indiana Jones meets like The Exorcist and like hell and all this shit like that. And it's really cool. And they're kind of building their own little universe. And they're hinting at the end, 6-part arc here, 6-part arc there, but like a whole little mini universe, which I like, and obviously, that's the appeal, right? You just, sometimes what kind of sucks about these independent titles is it's just, 12 issues and you never see it again. But I really love Hell to Pay. I also picked up Mark Millar's Nightclub #1, which I thought was pretty fun. Kid gets vampire powers. Boom, there we go. Vampires, they ain't been around in a while, so it's kind of cool seeing some vampires again. And if you're looking for a price tag, this thing was $199, so it's kind of hard to beat.
Yeah, I heard about that they're doing this entire series at $199. They're beating Marvel and DC just to get people back into that. I guess what was that, like the early 2000s price, $199. Right.
Yeah, and if you're playing the spec game, everyone knows Millar's kind of got his hands in the Netflix scene over there. So if you're trying to flip a book or see some book come up, it's not a bad read. I enjoyed it. And then the other one I really liked was Boom Studios' A Vicious Circle. And I didn't really, it's a kind of the prestige format, the Batman Damn type thing. It's got Lee Bermejo art, which is obviously fantastic. And the story's kind of crazy, man. I had no idea what the story was going to be going into it, but it's kind of like a time travel thing where this guy's hunting another guy and they're trying to prevent some, I don't know much about it because it's only the first issue, some device from being started that might be the end of the world. One guy's trying to make sure the device gets started. One guy's trying to end it. And as they're in the universes together, the time zones together, they stay there until what seems like one of them kills someone. So if they kill someone, boom, they move to like a different time. And it's wild. It's very interesting. I really
kind of like a quantum leap.
Yes, dude, it had mad quantum leap vibes, which I was all about that. But it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. So yeah. Eric, how about you? You reading? I know you kind of said you gave up some of the polls, but...
Well, yeah, but obviously I'm reading all the time, either leisure time just to kind of kick back, or I am working on some content. And believe it or not, you caught me at a great time because I'm working on this long form video. I know everybody knows I'm not the biggest fan of Miles Morales, but I have this video that I'm working on that's talking kind of about that, because I think there's a lot of people just seem to forget Ultimate Comics, and his obviously, he's the 3rd volume of this technically of Ultimate Comics Spider-Man. Right. So as a refresher for that video, I was going back in my actual long boxes and pulling some of those old material, not just with him, but also that second volume of Ultimate Comics with Peter, the younger Peter, and reading some of those, because there's some stuff that we talk about with similarities and origin and all that when talking about the history. So that's been what I have been doing, and that obviously includes that first volume, the Spider-Man volume of Miles Morales as well, which is like 2015, 2016. I can't remember, but yeah, it's been fun to kind of get caught up and obviously be able to talk about that stuff certainly in a video, because look, man, I had my gripes over the years, and definitely when I was doing all those videos or reviews, these are books that I was spending hundreds of dollars on, man, throughout the week, reading this material, even if I thought it sucked. So it does feel good to kind of get back to doing that type of content, and that's kind of where it's taken me this past week.
I recently, maybe it was earlier this year, I can't remember, I did a read through as well, because I loved the Ultimate stuff when it came out. It was like a revamp. It was a good jumping on point, and I reread the Bendis Spider-Man, the X-Men stuff, even the Ultimate Fantastic Four, which, to be honest, had a better read through the second time around. Until
a lot of that stuff does.
Yeah. So you got to the later issues, and those were kind of like the Thanos shit was god awful. But, but yeah, dude, and the Ultimate stuff, it's nice. It's some good shit. I enjoy that. So
yeah, that was fun. It's fun.
It's cool. Yeah. So Eric, first off, before we kind of like break off and say thank you, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you on all your platforms and everything?
Yes, Eric D. July, obviously on all like main social media is going to be the handle, be that Twitter, Instagram, or whatever. Young Ripper 59, obviously on the more video platforms like YouTube. Of course, you can find me there, still posting. Well, just now because I'm not stuck at a warehouse all the time. Getting back to posting regularly videos pertaining to various topics. There, and obviously we have Rippaverse.com if you want to learn more about my company and what it is that we're doing. You can still get in. We're actually having a holiday sale right now. You can still get in and get cover C of Isom #1. We'll get it to you very quickly. If you want to get in on a universe, and yeah, soon enough, man, that's where it's all at. Rippaverse.com. I don't even like telling people about my stuff. Go to the Rippaverse if you want to support anything it is that I'm doing and get some books out of it. So either way, man, this has been certainly fun. For me, it's always good to just chat about comics.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about this. If you order a book, that shit comes mailed legit. Like you got your like specialty. It's not even a Gemini. It's like a specialty box. Yep. It looks good. It comes protected. I mean, it was on point. So
appreciate that. Yeah, that was something we spent a lot of money on, like just getting the box design. You know, I worked with a little company out of Dallas here. And I was like, no, we're not going to do Gemini mailers. I know that we're sending this bad boy everywhere. It's a first impression. I'm going to get this nice sturdy box. That thing, you could put that thing through hell, man, and it will protect that box. So that's what it was all about.
Well, great, man. We really appreciate you coming on. Wish you all the success. Isom is a great book. I can't wait to read #2. I can't wait to see more of the Rippaverse in general. Get them other writers working. They need to be, I don't know what they're doing now. They better be writing right now.
Yeah.
Start pumping shit out. Okay. We can't be waiting all the time.
You're right. You're right.
Stuff going. So we really appreciate you having you on. You're more than welcome. We'll touch base with you. Hopefully as things get closer to the next campaign and maybe we can chat again at that time. So
let's do it, man. I appreciate you again, man.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Season 2, episode 49 in the books. Justin and I will be doing a yearly recap sometime soon. What are we looking at? A week or two for that?
Yeah. Another two episodes before the end of the year. So probably in like a week or so.
So everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we